What's going on, everybody? Kim Becker and Cody Rourke here for your weekly Denver Broncos AMA, brought to you by Mile High Sports. Cody, how you doing?
Tell you what, this Broncos season has got us all on the edge, Kim, and it's been, I'd say, mentally draining, right? Because, I think before the season even began, you and I've talked about this so much. Nobody imagined that this Broncos team would be looking the way that they are on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is playing really well, right? That's about the only positive thing I think that we can really kind of hang our hat on at this point about this season, because the expectations for the offense were a mile high, pun intended, at this point. And it's been rock bottom low. Like, that's just where we're at. We're hanging in there though. 5 weeks remaining, and you know what? There's a lot, right? We'll have you covered every single day, milehighsports.com, because for the true fan, there is never an off season. There's always going to be things we're going to look at: season review, player review, position review, and also with all the news that's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of change here in Dove Valley. So, Broncos country, I know the ride has not been what people had hoped for, but still buckle up, because it's going to be a little bit more bumpy throughout the entire rest of the season and into the off season.
Well, and those true fans are going to be even more locked in the offseason, because we all want that change, coming from both a professional and a personal standpoint here. I am a Denver Broncos fan, so I definitely want to see this change and see some different results. So, yes, absolutely. Make sure that you are staying tuned to Mile High Sports through the offseason, through the next 5 weeks, and, of course, on the daily. Cody will send out a tweet to ask questions that you all fans may have, and we're going to answer them right here on our weekly AMA. So we'll start with our first question here, Cody, which I have to laugh because it's just sad, but is there anything for Broncos fans to look forward to over the next 5 weeks?
This is a great question. To be honest with you, it's hard to imagine, like, based on how things have gone, right? Because we're at this point that we're recording this, it's 14 weeks into the season, and the end result for every game as it pertains to the offense has literally been the same exact result. And I think that's probably, like, very maddening. It's very frustrating. So is there anything that Broncos fans can look forward to? This is a hard question to answer. I mean, like, if you're like me and you love defensive football, for me, I'm excited to watch the defense the rest of the way. I'm excited to see maybe how they play against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this Sunday. I'm excited to see how they play against potentially Baker Mayfield on Christmas Day, now that he's a member of the Los Angeles Rams organization. Kyler Murray coming to town at some point. Can the Broncos defense get more takeaways? For me, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Who can we see emerge on the edge rusher position? Obviously, you're looking for Nick Bonito to step up a little bit more. Jonathan Cooper's been fun to watch as advertised. Baron Browning. I mean, I'd say, like, the defense is probably, like, the one thing I'm looking forward to seeing. And also, can special teams continue to improve? Can Montreal Washington, with these 5 games remaining, make better decisions as a return guy? But can he also spring a special teams touchdown? For me, these are things I want to see. These are things I'm hoping to see. The offense, can they be competitive? It's a big ask at this point, but those are things I'm looking forward to, at least with these 5 games remaining.
I'm looking forward to them because I think there still might be 1 week, 1 game that this team surprises us. I find it really hard to accept and swallow the fact that this season is completely over for this Denver Broncos team. I do still think that there might be a chance. So I'm still going to watch. I'm still going to pay attention because I do want to understand and just kind of try and see how this team comes together with what's happened over
there is one thing I do want to pinpoint out, right? Because, Kim, every year this happens, no matter how bad the Broncos are doing, 5 games left of NFL football, 5 games left of Broncos football.
Yeah.
Even though that the season's not gone how it's planned, the moment that it's over, fans are going to miss it, right? So I'd say, like, enjoy 5 games of Broncos football remaining.
Yes, absolutely. I'm right there with you, Cody. Okay, we'll move right on to the next one. Where does this Denver Broncos offense rank in comparison to one of the worst scoring offenses in the NFL in recent memory, Cody?
Well, this is a great question that was sent in, because right now, I mean, it's like you look at a Russell Wilson-led offense, and you're like, wow, it could potentially be one of the NFL's historically worst offenses. Like, really? Like, come on now. So I want to provide a little bit of context to this one, because Denver right now, through 14 weeks, they've scored 110 points, Kim. 110. Like, that is so bad. And just for reference, in 2000, the Cleveland Browns, they scored 161 points. Kim, there's 5 games remaining here for this Broncos team. It's hard to imagine them. I mean, 9 has really been the magic number for them, 9 or 16. And, like, anything under those has just been abysmal, right? It's hard to imagine that Denver is going to put up more than 42 points in the remaining 5 games. Like, even that is a big ask at this point. So yeah, like Denver is trending towards having one of the historically worst scoring offenses in league history since 2000. The 2000 Cleveland Browns have the cake there at 161, and that's not very good. But Denver here in 2022, with offenses changing how they have since 2000, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, you could say that again. That's 22 years. That we're
I know.
like,
I'm 28. I'm 28 years old. And like that's how far it's insanity. I never thought we were ever going to get to this point, Kim. And it's like we always ask ourselves every week, can the Broncos offense get any worse? And for some reason they find a way to get worse. And it's like, what the heck is going on?
I will say, though, with the combination of the Denver Broncos offense and their defense, always take the under in the next 5 weeks because
easy lock on the betting side.
It's just a lock. Exactly. So make sure if you want to looking to make some money here, there's a pro tip for you there. Pro tip. That's just not actually. But anyways, we'll move right along here. Will K'Waun Williams return this week for the Broncos?
Oh, this is a great question. I think there's a chance, Kim. And look, I want to preface this by saying K'Waun Williams has probably been, alongside Alex Singleton, one of the best offseason acquisitions that George Paton has made last year in free agency, coming over, and Denver really making the tough decision to move on from Bryce Callahan, who is, kind of often injured a little bit. He's having a great year with the Los Angeles Chargers, by the way. I don't think Denver could have been, if they would have brought him back, I don't think it would have been a mistake. I think it would have been a great value pickup for them as well. But K'Waun Williams, against the run, against the pass, has been very, very solid. Now for him, he suffered a knee injury in training camp, and he's continued to play. He's had a club on his hand. I mean, he's had an elbow, he's had a wrist, he's had the knee injury all season long, and he's played and battled through it. And then his knee started to lock up a little bit when he was out there. And if you're a defensive back, you have to plant and cut and react quickly. If your knee is locking up, not only do you risk serious injury, but you also risk, not being in position to make plays. And so K'Waun had an arthroscopic knee surgery, and it was a surprise last week in preparation for the Ravens. He returned to practice on a limited basis 2 weeks after having an operation, Kim. Like, that to me is wild. So the fact that he was limited, he had a chance to play, was downgraded as out Saturday before the Ravens game. There's a chance we see him this week, and I'm eager to see maybe what that looks like, because I think K'Waun, we haven't seen him against the Chiefs just yet, right? And so with Travis Kelce lines up in the slot, like, can K'Waun Williams be a neutralizer a little bit? To me, I want to see that here with K'Waun. Not quite sure if he's going to be ready to play this week. It's something that we will monitor as the Broncos are at practice here today. They'll be there Thursday and also Friday as they close things out in preparation for Mahomes and the Chiefs, which was flexed out of primetime action. It's going to be 2:05 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff and Power Field at Mile High. But there is a chance that K'Waun can play. We'll see if that's the case.
Okay, what about Randy Gregory? Do you think that we will see him play again this season?
This is also a great question, right? Because he suffered the torn meniscus in week 4 against the Las Vegas Raiders. He had an arthroscopic surgery, against his what we call kind of like a bucket handle meniscus in a sense, which they could be a little bit complicated. Sometimes when you talk about a meniscus, it's usually 4 to 8 weeks. It's been a little bit longer for Randy Gregory to come back. And I think Denver wants him to be on the right path, but also you have to imagine at this point of the season, with Denver being at the record that they're at, really nothing to play for at this point except pride. Do you put Randy Gregory back out there on the football field this season, considering he just had that surgery? And, is there anything that he can gain out of playing? I think it'd be good to see him play, but you also have to make sense. Like, okay, what if he gets hurt in like one of the final games of the season? Then all of a sudden it's like, now he could potentially miss time going into next year. This is a guy whose availability has often been in question so far throughout his career, whether it be due to suspension, whether it be due to some injuries and things like that. He has been working on the side field here for this Broncos team, Kim, and I'll be very intrigued to see what happens, because right now the Broncos are getting a lot of valuable playing time with Baron Browning and Jonathan Cooper, and right now that might just be the plan going forward. So I think we'll see what happens this week. If he starts to maybe return to practice on a limited basis to team, position-specific drills, maybe. But if he continues to be off on the side field, I'd imagine that they're going to say, hey, all right, you know what? At this point, we're shutting you down for the rest of the year. We'll go into next year fully healthy and ready to go. So that's kind of like a double-edged sword right now as it pertains to this Broncos team and Randy.
No, that's what I was just thinking. It's kind of a weird place that the Denver Broncos find themselves in, because, yes, there's still 5 weeks left. These guys want to play. We know that. Life, this is their job, they play for their family, but at the same time it's like, what are the Denver Broncos playing for over the next 5 weeks? Is it useful to have these guys in there that could, have some hazardous situations as you go into next season. You want to play for right now, right? They want to live in the moment and do everything for this season, but it's hard looking at the recent history of this team this season for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of where this Broncos team is at, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it'd be different if they were playing for like draft positioning and things like that. But the reality is their first round pick that they have this year is all contingent upon where San Francisco finishes. So there's nothing they can do as it pertains to that. No amount of wins that Denver does at this point in time is going to help them in that situation. So
yes. Well, this actually leads right into our next question very well. Do you think the Broncos should sit Russell Wilson in the final few games since Denver really has nothing to play for?
This is a great question. For me personally, Kim, I believe that, okay, I think you give Russell Wilson this week. Obviously, you got to see him against Patrick Mahomes again. Yeah. You want to be able to see that matchup. But I think maybe like with like 3 or 2 games remaining on the season, I think maybe you shut him down for the year because at this point, as you and I've talked about, Denver really has nothing at this point to play for the remainder of the season in terms of anything that's longstanding. However, Russell Wilson is part of the Broncos' long-term investment at the quarterback position. And I think one of the biggest things is if he goes out in, let's say, week 17, week 18, what if he suffers a serious injury, right? Then that impacts him being available and ready to go for the start of next season, which next season is going to be huge for that when it comes to Russell Wilson and this Broncos team. So I would personally sit him in the final 2 games of the season just so you can protect your investment. Is it going to be a popular decision? No, because I guarantee you're going to get fans and it's like, oh, you paid him all this money, he needs to play. But the reality is, yeah, you're tied to him for quite some time now remaining for the remainder of the foreseeable future. And if Russ gets hurt and let's say the final game of the season, you hire let's say the Broncos move on from Nathaniel Hackett, you hire a brand new coach, you hire a new offensive coordinator, you're going to need your quarterback to be on par with some of the things that are going on there. So I just think that the risks outweigh the pros at this point here in this situation. So for the final 2 games of the season, I would sit him for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes on that one. And we've kind of talked about this last question a little bit. We've addressed it in different ways, but to tie a bow on this whole thing, Cody, is there anything that you can tell Broncos fans to give them optimism about what is ahead?
Well, this is a great one, Kim, because I think ultimately as it pertains to this team, like the outlook of this team right now does not seem very promising, right? Because of the way that things have gone. But I think that something to look forward to in terms of being optimistic is, can the Broncos get themselves out of this mess? And I want to reference some other teams. Okay, let's take a look at the Miami Dolphins when they had Brian Flores, before Mike McDaniel became their head coach, before they traded for Tyreek Hill. Tua Tagovailoa's future in the NFL was put into question essentially, and their offense stunk. Yeah. And Mike McDaniel comes in, and of course, you trade for Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, you have some playmakers there, but you build a system that fits around what Tua Tagovailoa can do really well. Yeah. And now we're seeing Tua and the Miami Dolphins offense playing some really good football right now. They're in the playoff conversation. They're in the division conversation, the AFC East. Let's go to New York, right? Daniel Jones, a guy who is like, okay, hey, Daniel Jones, this is probably going to be his last year in New York. We'll see if Brian Daboll can do anything with him. Mike Kafka, Brian Daboll have come in and they've built a system around Daniel Jones and what he does really well. And they've surrounded him with some pieces. And all of a sudden, Daniel Jones is playing some of the best football of his career when everything was in question last year, right? So it tells me, like, as bad as the Broncos offense is, as bad as Russell Wilson has looked this season, I do think that George Payton, if he's around, there's a lot of questions about, when he's on the hot seat, things like that. This is going to be an offseason where I think they're really going to be focused on building the offense. And it's possible. It's possible that things can turn around going into next year. But I think that all of us, once we go into the offseason, once we go into training camp, I think the excitement is not going to be as high as it was. I think the expectations are going to be tempered until we're proven otherwise, which is probably the smart course of action here at this point. But to me, I think that it is fixable. As much as it doesn't seem fixable at this point in time, it is, and things can turn around in a year. So there is that possibility, Broncos country. Outside of that, I'm not entirely sure what they can necessarily do, because there is going to be a lot of change here with coaches. I think you're going to see a lot of position coaches out the door here for Denver. You're going to see probably a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. How does it impact Ejiro Evero, what he's been able to do defensively? So many questions at this point in time, but there is a lot to look forward to. And I think that the Broncos offense can be better going into next year. What they do in the offseason, free agency, the NFL draft is going to determine a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. The optimism of intrigue and the unknown as we head in to the last few weeks. Yeah, seriously, the last few weeks here. And then, of course, the off season, because we know they won't be in the playoffs. So, Broncos country, you just enjoy those playoffs without the Broncos one more time. I know we're all pretty used to that. Hopefully, you have a second favorite team here that you can root for. But, Cody, as always, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this. And like I said at the beginning, make sure you guys are following Mile High Sports on Twitter. And, of course, Cody, because he will send out a tweet that asks what questions you have, and we will address them right here on our weekly AMAs here at Mile High Sports. So, Cody, I will see you next week. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Kim.